Hey, today I was wanting to get away from tools a little bit and talk about a big part of my business, and that's nuts and bolts. Um, I know I love talking about tools, but I'm just amazed at how many times I talk to people that either come in the store or just when I'm out and about that don't know the basics about a bolt. And I just want to somehow, in a short video, hopefully, I don't edit, so I'm going to try to get through this thing as quick as possible, but give you the basics of a nut and bolt, and that way it might save you some hassles in the future or some issues in the future. But we're going to basically talk about just a regular hex cap screw on this video. We're going to talk about just three grades: no grade bolt, a grade 5, and a grade 8. As a do-it-yourselfer, grade 8 bolts you probably won't run into very often. I mean, if you're doing work on lawn tractors and bigger tractors and things like that, you could run into a grade 8 bolt, but most of the time you're just going to run into your no grades and your grade 5s. So here we go. We're going to look for slashes. That's the main way to determine what the grade is. Okay, so traditional bolt, you look at it, no slashes. But you will, which I do want to point out, see in this case initials, which is a manufacturer indicator. I would not buy, and strongly recommend not buying bolts that don't have a manufacturer emblem, symbol, or initials on it. Here is a bolt, for example, that has 3 slashes on it, but no marking for a manufacturer. I believe in the late 90s, kind of when I was getting into this industry, there was a rash of counterfeit bolts coming into the country, and they weren't meeting the specs that grade 5 needs, or grade 8 to qualify to be a grade 8 or grade 5. So I would not even go nowhere near this bolt. I wouldn't trust my life with it. So there are some counterfeit bolts out there that even have manufacturer markings on them that I would not trust. That, if you really are doing work that is critical, over the head work where you really need to depend on that grade 8 or grade 5, I would do the research into the manufacturer. You can just Google them and find out. So no slashes, but manufacturer marking. 3 slashes and a manufacturer emblem in the center. This one here is American made bolt. It's a nice bolt. Not saying they got to be American made or not, but this particular brand here is 3 slashes determine the grade. To determine grade, it's 2 above the slashes. So 3 slashes plus 2 is a grade 5. Here we got 6 slashes. This particular manufacturer uses a solid triangle, which you can research. 6 slashes plus 2, grade 8. All right, pretty simple. No slashes, no grade. Or technically maybe a grade 2, because they do indicate that slash, but no slashes, but grade 2. No grade is what we kind of refer to them. 3 slashes, grade 5, 6 slashes, grade 8. Pretty simple. That's pretty much the basics of it, and not a lot of confusion with my customers and people I talk to on that part of it. Now, there are some manufacturers out there that use a clock type gauge, so that would be a grade 5. Don't see them out there a lot, so we're not even going to go there with this video here. But where a lot of my confusion comes from my customers and people I speak to are the coatings, especially the blue one. Now, the blue coating is just basically a dye over a zinc, silver zinc, which is the most popular one out there. Where the confusion comes from, especially when it comes to your farm stores, is someone will put the blue dye on your metric bolts. Some will put them on their grade 5s, which really confuses my customers because they'll think they're buying a grade 8 bolt because it has blue dye on it, and they're a grade 5. This particular bolt here, blue dye on it, 6 slashes. It's a Rockford bolt. They actually put Rockford on there. Grade 8. Once again, all over the board with this purple dye, blue dye stuff. Look for the markings. Another example, black oxide, really good bolt, 6 slashes, grade 8, solid triangle for the indicator of the manufacturer. They rust real easy. You don't see them around very much, mainly because they'll rust on the store shelf because they're just collecting normal day moisture in the air, and they'll eventually start rusting. So they're inexpensive. I wouldn't hesitate using this at all if it's going into an engine compartment, or you'll see them in manufacturing when they're going to be painted over, or I-beams and stuff like that. You'll see them out there, but they're usually in an environment that is suitable and they're not going to rust, or rusting is not a concern, I guess would be another way of doing it. So here you go. Coating does not matter. It's just about rust protection, basically. You're looking for the slashes. So that was one of my big critical things I always hear from my customers as far as confusion. The other thing is, I'll have customers come in and say, hey, we need some 2.5-inch bolts. So we'll go get some, bring them up there and say, no, they'll say, no, we need them all the way threaded to the top. Well, that's what they're talking about. These are called tap bolts. You see them a lot. You get them a lot when you're buying furniture that you have to put together, exercise equipment, things like that. You'll see them. We don't carry a lot of them. Most of your fastener stores will not carry a tap bolt. Well, we can get them, but we won't carry them. The difference is, like I said, threaded to the top, where here's a cap screw that no threads all the way to the top, just on the end. That's what a cap screw would be. It gives you a longer shank. One of the advantages of this cap screw versus this tap screw is this is stronger, because once you cut threads all the way in there, you're going to lose strength. So a lot stronger, even though it's not graded. It does have the manufacturer stamp on it, but it's not graded. Here's a cap screw, longer one that is graded, a grade 5, so they're out there, obviously. So that's my other confusion I get from my customers. While we're talking about this particular cap screw with no markings as far as grade, I also like to point out that that's no different than this or this when it comes to machine screws. Basic machine screws, pretty much the same grade. Keep that in mind. Now this one here, it's got the 3 slashes, obviously a lot stronger than this machine screw. All right. Once again, trying to keep this video short. I do want to talk about threads. USS, SAE, we'll put that aside. That's more for the industry and people that deal with nuts and bolts all the time. For the normal do-it-yourselfer, coarse thread, fine thread's all you need to know, and per inch. So threads per inch is the key factor. So a 3/8 bolt, coarse thread will be 3/8 16. If you put a ruler 1 inch, that you count it out, 16 threads will be there. Same thing with the fine thread, 3/8 will be 3/8 24. Your inch, you'll have 24 threads. That's your difference. 3/8 16, 16 threads per inch, 3/8 24, 24 threads per inch. Pretty basic for a lot of the guys dealing with this stuff all the time, but once again, this is for a basic video. Stay with me. So my next question I always get is, why would you use the fine thread versus the coarse thread? And usually my response is, if you can use a coarse thread, use a coarse thread. They're easier, the nuts thread on quicker. If you're wrenching it, if you're using an impact, coarse threads are just fine. You use the particular lock washer, lock nut, you're in good shape, which we'll talk about that stuff in future videos. But coarse thread are great. Use them 90% of the time. Fine thread, these is my example the easy example I have is, think of something that vibrates a lot, like a grind, a generator or something like that. When you start dealing with stuff like that, you'll normally run into fine thread a lot more often. And the reason is you got more threads inside or touching surface material, and with that you'll have less of a chance for it to back off, loosen itself up. And it also, being that you have more surface area, it does give it a little more tensile strength, but not a lot, because the tensile strength all falls into the grade of the bolt. So yes, you can get fine thread grade 8 bolts, and you can get fine thread grade 5 bolts, and there's even fine thread no grades. But once again, normally it's because they want more threads in contact with the surface internally or with a nut on it, that with that vibration it will hold and not want to back itself out. The coarse threads will have an easier time backing themselves out because there's less material biting, the surface. So pretty much it in a nutshell. Hope this video helped you out with bolts 101, let's call it. I appreciate you watching these things. I do plan on coming out with some hex nuts, because once again, I mentioned it earlier, lock nuts, top locks, so many different nuts out there that go with these bolts that serve their purpose, and people need to know that when they're putting things together. So thanks for watching, and like and share and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.